I'd love to talk to you a bit about the integration. So after people have done a ceremony, obviously it's easy to get sort of sucked back into the real world, you know, going back into work environments or even a city or back into normal life, and then old patterns can come back in, or there'll be challenges.
Yeah, your friends, social situations,
you might
all
not
that kind of
give
stuff,
yourself enough time to rest, things like this. How can people integrate after doing a ceremony, and like how can they make it easier on themselves?
Yeah, I think one of the things I always recommend to people is, you know, it's a very amazing space to be in a ceremony, and you share this incredible journey normally with a group of people. Now, you know, it's good to maybe stay connected with some of those people that you shared that experience with, so that you've kind of got like a kind of baseline to go back to, and also, you know, that you can support each other to kind of like, you know, stay in alignment with the vibration that you received and the messages that came through then. So yeah, stay connected with people in the circle. On a very practical level, yes, as you mentioned, resting, very, very important. You know, give yourself space as well, you know, because there's one thing, resting is another thing, is actually having some quiet time. You know, we live such busy lives. Very important in the days after ceremony to make space for that, you know, so you've just got some silence, some quiet time, maybe even as well to, you know, get some kind of, you know, holistic treatment, or, you know, like, so maybe, you know, getting a massage or Reiki or something like that, or, you know, so even if you're, you know, not really abundant, maybe you can work out some kind of share thing with somebody, so that you can say, okay, you know, I'll get a message next week, you know, that kind of thing. So there's a nice, kind of exchange going on there.
And there's other plant medicines as well that people can use in complementary with the ayahuasca.
I would say the best thing you can do is eat very, very nutritious, good food, and also really connect with your diet, and try and keep it really clean, in the sense of, like, you know, it's very easy to have food with, you know, additives. Organic food's great because then you're not being exposed to pesticides and harsh chemicals in that respect. Also, even simple stuff like the water you drink. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of places on this planet that the water supply is fluoridated, or there's fluoride in the salt, so that's something to be aware of depending on your geographical location as well. Clean water is, you know, we are made up mainly of water. It's a very, very important part of who we are. So yeah, if you can get access to spring water, or kind of some really
living
good
water,
good source of water, that's kind of a good thing as well.
Some people have also mentioned things like Cambo and these other kind of plant medicines from the Amazon rainforest. What do you think about these?
Well, I think, you know, everyone has their preferred tools. I mean, ayahuasca, you know, often they associate tobacco with ayahuasca. The two work very well together, kind of thing. Over the years of developing my practice, I've kind of moved away from that a little bit, just because there's a lot of people in the West who've got like an unhealthy connection with tobacco. I do sometimes use it still, like in the blessing of the medicine and that kind of stuff, but beyond that, I don't recommend or invite people to smoke within the ceremonial space. And just, I think, you know, like bringing that up is not into people's consciousness when they're trying to, you know, maybe give up smoking, or, you know, nowadays I think in most places in the world, especially in the West, you can't even smoke in buildings anyway. You have to go smoke outside, you know, in public spaces. So, you know, kind of on that level, that we've got a recognition that, you know, smoking is not necessarily the most supportive process for our development as human beings. But there, you know, there are times when, you know, it can be a very, very powerful healing tool, especially if it's used, you know, in a ceremonial way, and for healing practices. Kambo is an interesting medicine. It's very much a warrior medicine and a cleansing medicine. Traditionally, it's not really connected so much with ayahuasca. It's more kind of in the northern parts of the Amazon, and then moving over into Brazil and stuff like that. I wouldn't recommend doing Kambo after a ceremony. It is often offered in some situations. Possibly before. It's a very, very strong medicine. I think it depends on your constituency. Some people are way too sensitive for Kambo. Some people absolutely love it. And it is a great detox. But personally, I would say after a ceremony, you want to be very gentle with yourself. Like,
Yeah,
I think
take it
anything
easy.
that kind of is a bit too kind of harsh and forceful is only going to kind of like close you up rather than open you. But then for some people, they need that real whack to kind of like,
Yeah,
you know,
and
keep
I think
themselves
you also
open. But
mentioned something about rapé.
yeah, hape as well is another thing as well.
through
It can be a bit, some people love it and they say it really makes a difference. As I said, traditionally from the shamanic practices of that kind of west coast of the Amazon, the Ucayali region, where it's, you know, kind of, you know, really been sort of like developed, it's not so big, if at all. It's the same thing. It's more of a kind of, you know, there are other tribes in the Amazon who work with hape, who work with the Varrola seed as well, which is an even that's more like a DMT kind of snuff rather than a hape is often more like a tobacco-based snuff kind of thing, where they work with that and that's their kind of shamanic practice. But yeah, it's not so associated with the kind of the ayahuasca practice and the dieta kind of like kind of plant shamanism kind of practice. But yeah, I think, you know, that's the same thing. I think people have to really tune in and feel you know what's their path. But yeah.
And I mean, I'm going to bring it back to like something quite practical that a lot of people are probably wondering about, and that's just how much should people expect to pay for an ayahuasca ceremony. We're always, you know, a bit worried about money and things like that.
That's a great question. I mean, something I hear a lot in you know, kind of in this community is like, oh, you know, it comes from the rainforest, it's free, you know, it grows as a plant, you shouldn't have to pay for this medicine, it's for healing kind of thing. And yeah, I understand very much people's perspective when they say that. And at the same time, it does take a lot of effort to make medicine. You know, people have to go into the forest, they have to harvest it, they have to cook it. That involves, you know, like, you know, large amounts of firewood. There's a whole process where you have to smash it and pound it up. So there's a lot of man hours and resources that go into making this product. At the same time, you know, these people in the forest are on the front line. They're the guardians of the forest, and you know, any way that we can support them, because, you know, if we're not supporting them, there's other people coming along who are like, hey, we could buy the wood from you, chop your trees down, or, you know, let's extract the oil, or take the minerals, or grow cows and, you know, make hamburgers.
And we have to remember that the Amazon rainforest is responsible for like 70% of the world's oxygen supply, I think, something along those lines.
I mean, you know, the rainforest is so important for us on so many levels, as you say, for producing oxygen. I think, you know, that has a whole effect on regulating, regulating the climate, exactly. And then beyond that, you know, there are medicinal plants and trees in the Amazon that probably still haven't been discovered, or definitely haven't been discovered yet. You know, it's the most biodiverse place on earth. You know, all the big pharmaceutical companies have been sending, you know, biopirates down to the Amazon to find these plants and then develop them into drugs that they can then sell, you know. And obviously when you go and work with people in the forest, you know, everywhere around you there's plants that can, you know, cure and heal and support our, you know, our development. So yeah, it's an incredibly powerful place and very, very important to all of humanity. So yeah, any way that we can support, any way we can support those people is great. And, you know, what kind of price can you put on healing as well? You know, I get people, you know, who said to me that in a ceremony, you know, in a one-night ceremony, you know, they got more psychotherapy and healing than they did, you know, in 10 years of, you know, working with a psychotherapist that cost them, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. So, you know, how do you put a price on that? And at the same time, you know, we do live in a world that's, you know, unfortunately based around money, but then we've got to look at money as well as an exchange system, as an energy exchange. It's an energy exchange system, you know. It's like the money itself. We haven't come up with anything better yet, so we're still using money. So, you know.
So just on that note, like, if you could give us a kind of variable price range, like what are people looking at from what price to what price, and then what are the components within that can affect like the quality of the brew? I mean, aside from choosing someone who's more conscious and who is giving back to the rainforest and who is taking care of, I mean, I think you mentioned earlier reimplantation of the trees themselves, like making sure you're not over collecting. Apart from these like sustainability issues, like
well, that's very, very rare anyway. I mean, there's very, very few people out there who are like sustainably harvesting. Sustainably harvesting, I think the most important to sustainably harvesting ayahuasca is not to chop the tree down that the vine's growing on. I mean, that I've seen that, and I've, you know, even when I go and harvest. If I'm not there watching these guys, a lot of the time, you know, if they know that no, it's much easier just to get a chainsaw, just knock the tree down, you know.
Wow,
Because
okay.
you know, when I harvest, I've done that. I've been up the tree, you're like 30 meters up in the canopy, you know, hacking this vine with a machete. You've not got any safety equipment, you know, harnesses or, you know, safety nets. If you fall from 30 meters, it's not going to be good, you know. So yeah, that's,
So there's a lot of manpower going
yeah,
into,
you know,
like,
you have to, you know, when I harvest,
properly.
you know, I have to, you know, now you know, I don't do that so much myself. You know, I have a team who help me, but yeah, it's a big ask to ask somebody to climb up there, and you know, then you need to find vines where you've got another vine that you can come down afterwards. So you don't, obviously chopping the vine down that you're on's not going to be very good, clever either. So yeah, that's the first thing, is sustainably harvesting the medicine. Beyond that, really, you should be replanting, and when you're replanting, you're kind of almost replanting for the next generation. So yeah, you know, ideally you would be ideally you would be maybe replanting kilo for kilo what you harvest. You know, that would obviously add a huge, you know, extra price onto the cost of the medicine. And then, you know, same thing, do people cooking with stainless steel pots? Most of the medicine that you drink on this planet is going to be cooked in aluminium, mainly because it's very expensive and also very hard to find big aluminium pots in you know, in South America, especially, you know, in these regions where the really good stuff grows. So yeah, often those pots would have to be imported. There's not many people out there who will do that, you know. So
which pots did you say was more?
Well, stainless steel is the best to cook in, but unfortunately it's very hard to find stainless steel pots. Personally, I had to import pots from Chile and then bring them over from Europe, and they're very, very expensive as well. And yeah, you know, flying them over is not a cheap business, and getting them into it's a whole big deal.
And then of course you said that the age of the vine is also going to make a difference to the brew. So if people are using older vines, I'm sure this is going to affect the quality and of course then the price.
Yeah, I think that's really a connoisseur thing. All that stuff we were talking about earlier as well is not something that's going to be on the radar of someone who's just starting to drink. And even getting that information, you know, or awareness is not, you know, it's really kind of like, you know,
something you
next
take into
level.
consideration like later on.
If you're wanting to train, I think that's when that could maybe be important. Or if you're actually on the ground there watching the medicine being made and in that process, then you could, you know, it'd be more appropriate to ask those questions. I think if you ask that to somebody who's making a ceremony in the West and you're getting an email through, there's probably more important questions that you'd want to ask.
And then, so on that note, what would you say is like the minimum sort of price to the maximum kind of price people are looking at?
That is a very hard question to ask. I mean, you know, how long's a piece of string? It's like you really have to trust your intuition on that. I couldn't really say, you know, because some people may do a ceremony, you know, on some kind of energy exchange with you. You know what I mean? I've done that in the past with people. You know, sometimes I've done ceremonies, you know, as a kind of as a service kind of thing for people who, you know, are absolutely in no position whatsoever financially to be there. And, you know, I just do it because it's the right thing to do. And then at the same time, on the opposite end of the scale, I've worked with, you know, extremely, you know, wealthy benefactors who've given me immense amounts of money, mainly so that I can buy a rainforest and plant trees, and, you know, and they know that
they want to give back.
They know that, you know, I'm on the ground and I can actually channel those resources into the right places, that it's going to, you know, have a benefit for you know, for a lot of people, kind of thing. So yeah. It's very hard to put a price on that. You know, as I said, I think you have to really trust your intuition on it, and really, you know, if you do some research and some background into where the medicine's been made, who's making it, all this kind of stuff, and whether those resources are actually going back to the forest, then I think, you know, then it's probably, you know, worth digging a bit deeper into your pocket than maybe, say, if someone's like, you know,
in that way you can feel more comfortable with what you're doing, feel like you're actually also giving back to the environment. And I suppose how someone is harvesting is also going to affect how the medicine works because of intention and energy, positivity.
Of course.